Hello, my name is Tanya Haney, and I'm going to be talking about differentiation in the classroom. What is differentiated instruction? So one definition is differentiation is simply a teacher attending to the learning needs of a particular student or group of students, rather than teaching a class as though all individuals in it were basically alike. And that quote is by Carol Ann Tomlinson. It's also can be described as delivering instruction activities and approaches that target the diverse learning needs of students. So basically, it's the idea that one shoe doesn't fit all when you're teaching. So you need to be flexible and differentiate your curriculum so that you can accommodate all learners. Okay, so I think it's also important to talk about what differentiation is, instruction is, and what it's not. So it's not just individual student instruction. And it's not giving the smart students more work than the struggling students. I hear some teachers say that sometimes. But we want to make it fair for all students, and we want to make sure that the material that we're teaching and what we give our students is challenging for those smart students as well as the students that are struggling in our classroom. And it is not chaos and loss of classroom control. So this is not having kids running all over the place doing whatever they want to do. It is, however, a blend of whole class group instruction and individual instruction. It's qualitative, adjusts the nature of the assignment and not the amount. And it's management and monitoring of many activities simultaneously. So when you're giving your assessments and when you're assessing if your lesson plan is working, you want to be constantly doing formative assessment with your students, asking higher level thinking questions, and you want to make sure that you're monitoring them to also monitor their conversations as well and make sure they stay on topic. Differentiation instruction is not. So this was a little comic that I pulled from the internet, and I thought it was very relevant to this presentation. So it says, class, all year long, I taught each of you to learn at your own pace in your own personal style. I've set goals for each of you individually to help you reach your own unique potential, and now the results of that will be measured with a standardized test. So I pulled this from the internet because I want to make sure that what we teach our students, we're also assessing that same material in the same format. I have had this this happened to myself as well when I was in school, where my teachers, my instructors would teach me how to do it a certain way, and we would be practicing that, and then when I get a test, it's nothing like what they were teaching me. And so I bumped the test only because I wasn't used to doing it in that format. And so I think it's very important to be mindful of if that the teaching, the instruction matches our assessment and what we're going to be assessing them on. So what's the purpose of differentiated instruction? So the purpose is basically to accommodate all learning styles in your classroom. You don't want to leave anybody out. And so you have basically 3 different learning styles. You have auditory, which is hear, listen to understand. You have visual, which is observe, mental pictures, and they basically see to learn. And you have kinesthetic, which is hands-on, do-it-yourself learning. And so you want to make sure when you're planning your lesson plan that you accommodate all of these learning styles in your lesson plan for every subject every day. And the reason for that is because you don't want your students to look like this young man is looking. As you can see, the teacher is up at the board trying to teach a lesson, and you see, looks like most of the students are engaged, but we see him that is turned around, probably looking at the clock, and it looks like he's bored, doesn't understand, and wants to get out of there. Can't wait for this particular class to end. And so we want to have our students engaged in learning, because when they're engaged, they're learning. When they're not learning, and they won't do well on the formative or summative test. And so differentiated instruction probably looks something like this. As you can see, we have, it looks like 4 different centers. And you can see kids listening to something on the laptop. You can see kids are engaged, they're happy. It looks like we have a group that's back there that's working with, looks like manipulatives. You have another group that's reading. And so, as you can see, there's different things going on in this classroom, but every child is engaged in their learning. Okay, so differentiated classrooms need, first of all, they need to have ongoing formative and summative assessments. By frequently assessing students' knowledge and skills, teachers can use that information to develop and refine instruction to meet the students' shifting needs. And they also need to be a variety of grouping methods that include whole group, small group, peer group, in addition to having students work on their own. So 3 questions that you want to ask yourself when you're making your lesson plans and when you're coming up with these strategies. You want to ask, what do I want my students to know, understand, and be able to do? You want to also ask, what can I do instructionally to get my students to learn this? And how will my students show what they know? Okay, so why is differentiation important? So this chart tells it all. It says we learn only 10% what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we hear and see, 70% of what we discuss, 80% of what we experience, and 95% of what we teach others. And so, as you can see, when we get down to that 50%, so that's 50% of what we see in here. So that's your visual and your auditory, combining them both together. Where do you have to do like graphic organizers or pictures, things like that? You want to make sure your students are having an opportunity to see you, to hear you, to also be able to discuss the material with their peers, related to their own experiences that they might have, and also give them an opportunity to teach it to others, like to show what they know, or to come up, and get in front of the class and present their ideas to others. You may do that in a small group. They can do that at their small group where they're at, or they can also do it in front of the class. Okay, so comparing classrooms. So you have the traditional classroom and the differentiated classroom. Oh, I'm getting tongue-tied today. Okay, so the traditional classroom looks like an assessment is at the end of the learning to see who got it. It's a single definition of excellent exists. Whole class instruction dominates. A single text prevails. A single form of assessment is used. The differentiated classroom looks like assessment is ongoing and diagnostic to understand how to make instruction more responsive to learners' needs. Its excellence is defined in a large measure by individual growth from a starting point. And then many instructional arrangements are used. Multiple materials are provided and students are assessed in multiple ways. So it's a lot of formative assessments going on because you're constantly assessing it to see where your students are and to learning how to adjust to their different needs. So tools that you can use to differentiate in the classroom. So basically you want to make sure that you integrate hands-on activities to learn in your instructions. That may be from the use of computers, tablets. I know some teachers use like Google Classrooms. They use different apps. They use interactive whiteboards, and electronic responsive devices. And that could be cell phones, it could be apps, it could be Kindles, Chromebooks, things like that. But it's creating an engaging learning environment. That's what we're using these tools for. So one thing that I do in my classroom is like we have spelling words every week. And so I give them 10 spelling words. For each of their spelling words, they have a dice. And so for the first word, they may, roll it. Let's say they get a number 1. That means write your word in a sentence. They roll the dice again. They might get a number 3, which is write a synonym of your word. And so this is basically giving them an opportunity to make it fun and to do something that's hands-on and that they can participate in and learn the words at the same time. So this is a quote by Benjamin Franklin. It says, "Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I will learn." So we want to give our students multiple chances and opportunities every day to be involved in the instruction in our lesson plans and what we deliver to them. And it says, how we teach makes a difference. And so it does make a difference. And so you see this teacher is up at the board, and it says, "I know you're as excited as I am about today's lesson." But when you look out and see these students, they're all asleep. And so just because you're excited about delivering a lesson, we want to also make sure our students aren't involved with the lesson to make it exciting for them as well. And these are my references, and I do thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope that you found it very useful. Thanks.